China has announced a plan to assemble a massive solar power station in space, reportedly spanning 1 kilometer across. Once placed 36,000 kilometers above Earth, it would remain fixed over the same region of the planet. Officials compare it to hoisting the Three Gorges Dam, currently the world's largest hydroelectric plant, into orbit, describing a project so vast it could annually match the total oil extracted worldwide. Although it sounds like science fiction, Chinese researchers see it as a realistic leap for renewable energy. Space-based solar power offers a big advantage: uninterrupted sunlight. Ground-based panels grapple with clouds and darkness, but an orbital station sits above such hurdles. Engineers predict these panels could be up to 10 times more efficient, converting sunlight into power 24/7. The station's electricity would become microwaves beamed down to a receiver on Earth. If successful, it could cut fossil fuel reliance while offering baseload clean energy. Yet the challenges are huge. Launching the infrastructure is daunting, requiring China's next-gen Long March 9 rocket. Plus, beaming power via microwaves demands high precision. Any atmospheric moisture or misalignment could degrade efficiency. If you're new here and love forward-thinking energy tech, hit subscribe for more on how space missions are reshaping clean power. Despite obstacles, multiple nations are exploring this concept. The U.S. Air Force Research Lab backs SSPIDR, investigating how to beam solar energy from orbit. Japan's JAXA is testing smaller satellites, while the European Space Agency studies designs like CASSIOPEIA. Once deemed too costly, orbital solar now appears more feasible thanks to cheaper rockets, better solar cells, and improved robotic assembly. If China's ambitious station works, it might spark a new wave of international projects, or even a global space solar rivalry. Officials liken it to relocating the Three Gorges Dam above Earth. That dam already generates around 100 billion kilowatt-hours yearly, altering its regional environment. Now imagine a kilometer-wide structure collecting solar power constantly, no matter the weather below. Some experts call it a clean energy game changer. Others raise security or political concerns. If one nation controls a primary energy source orbiting overhead, how does that reshape power balances? And who ensures that no one misuses the microwave beam? While the engineering is extreme, the payoff could be immense. Land-based solar must cope with day-night cycles, land costs, or storage. A space-based station sidesteps those limits, offering a steady energy supply. Proponents claim it could eventually outcompete even cheap renewables once mass production and repeated rocket flights drive down costs. But skeptics see risks: high launch expenses, potential beam interference from storms, and vulnerabilities to sabotage. A single orbital power station might also become a tempting target for hackers or hostile groups. Nevertheless, progress marches on. China has been building ground prototypes in Chongqing and refining rocket designs. Pieces of the station could launch in phases, with in-orbit assembly via robots or modular docking. Even a partial success might encourage more players to join. Some foresee multiple stations beaming electricity worldwide, drastically cutting carbon emissions and reducing Earth's dependence on coal or oil. Alternatively, if major technical or financial snags arise, it might remain a futuristic curiosity. Speaking of futuristic, leave a like if you enjoy learning about big game-changing ideas and want more behind-the-scenes looks at energy breakthroughs. In the U.S., agencies like NASA and the Department of Defense monitor these developments. The same rocket technology that sends solar modules to orbit could also support lunar bases or deep space missions. Orbital solar assembly techniques might later apply to building massive telescopes or habitats. Each step draws us deeper into an era of large-scale cosmic construction, turning Earth's orbit into a site of continuous innovation. But how do you beam energy down safely? Engineers say the microwave beam would be designed to avoid scorching anything underneath. A ground-based rectenna would convert microwaves back to electricity, somewhat like a reversed radio station. In bad weather, beam strength might diminish. Some regions could find it safer to rely on standard renewables or advanced batteries. Advocates respond that the station can be sized or angled so most storms don't completely disrupt transmission. Public acceptance might hinge on transparent safety data and stable power costs. Agriculture could be a big winner. With space-based power, farmers wouldn't rely on grid fluctuations or diesel backup. If these stations achieve scale, grid operators might buy orbital solar during peak demand, smoothing supply. Households could benefit from cheaper energy if the system proves competitive. Worried about shipping rocket after rocket and cluttering orbit? Space debris is indeed a concern, but proponents hope modular designs and on-orbit servicing can keep the station functional with minimal waste. Over time, we may see engineering marvels that self-repair or upgrade with new modules. Think giant, slowly growing solar rafts that evolve as technology improves. Skeptics note, we need strict rules to prevent collisions or leftover rocket bodies from adding to orbital junk. If you find these long-term visions mind-blowing, tap subscribe for more deep dives on how technology could reshape our planet and beyond. No project of this scale comes cheaply. Even with modern rockets, building a kilometer-wide structure in orbit requires serious funding. But as with many large infrastructure ventures, costs might drop if nations treat it as a cooperative enterprise rather than a space race. Some experts imagine a future akin to the International Space Station, but dedicated to solar power. Other analysts expect national pride and security concerns to drive separate projects. China's official statements suggest they want to lead, referencing the Three Gorges Dam as a model. They're framing it not only as an energy win, but also a signal of technological might. Geopolitics aside, the potential environmental benefit is huge. A continuous beam of renewable energy would displace fossil fuels and help slow climate change. Land-based solar can't compete with that kind of uptime. However, it's unclear how soon we'd see net benefits. If the station takes decades to fully deploy, we might need fast, immediate fixes for global warming long before that. Still, the dream is alluring, an inexhaustible power source overhead, unaffected by day or night, storms, or seasonal changes. Meanwhile, the technology behind the beam remains controversial. Could it fry birds or planes? Advocates say they'll operate at safe intensities, carefully aimed at remote areas or special receiving fields. Automatic cutoffs would trigger if something blocks the beam. Researchers also promise to manage atmospheric absorption, though that's easier said than done. Even if the station's design is sound, public misunderstandings might spark protests. Communicating the science behind how microwaves differ from, say, weaponized lasers will matter for acceptance. Comment below if you'd trust space-based microwaves powering your city, or if the notion makes you uneasy. Then there's the matter of cost per kilowatt hour. While early feasibility studies show space-based solar may eventually match fossil fuels, it's not guaranteed. Traditional renewables keep getting cheaper, battery storage improves, and nuclear remains an option for stable baseload. Orbital solar must compete in that context. If the station's electricity proves expensive, governments might balk at scaling it further. But many believe the relentless solar influx above Earth justifies the R&D investment. The impetus is stronger if climate pressures demand cleaner, more constant energy. Looking at other national projects, the U.S. invests in space solar prototypes with an eye to defense applications. Soldiers in remote outposts could receive beamed power, reducing diesel convoys. Japan sees an opportunity to supply its dense coastal cities. Europe weighs it as part of its net zero push. Whether these efforts converge into one global system or remain fragmented is anyone's guess. Some dream that energy from orbit could be shared like the internet, bridging gaps in poor countries. But that requires major diplomacy, as well as networks of ground stations. The scale is gargantuan, reminiscent of the 20th century megaprojects like interstate highways or massive dams. Still, the payoff might be worth it. The original Three Gorges Dam faced controversies, yet became a linchpin of China's electricity sector. Now imagine a Three Gorges in the sky, pumping out even more power without flooding land or displacing populations. The irony is that rocket flights pollute in the short term, but the long-term impact could be net positive if fossil fuel plants shut down. Another question is maintenance. Once built, how do you service a kilometer-wide structure orbiting Earth? Designers expect robotic arms or AI-driven drones to handle it. Ensuring reliability over decades is part of the challenge. One bright side is the synergy with other space endeavors. The same heavy-lift rockets can support lunar exploration or deep space missions. The skills to assemble large orbital stations might lead to future cosmic infrastructure, like space hotels or advanced telescopes. If the technology for harnessing solar power from orbit matures, we might eventually see a chain of satellites and reflectors delivering global coverage, offering near-limitless power if harnessed responsibly. Of course, everything hinges on real testing. Currently, ground-based demonstrations prove the microwave concept, but scaling it up by orders of magnitude is a leap into the unknown. Critics recall grand visions from decades past, like orbital colonies or space elevators, that remain unrealized. Even if China's plan is bold, it might be a partial or long-term venture. The difference now is a global push for clean energy and the reduced cost of space launches, fueling more serious attempts than ever before. For everyday people, the result could be cheaper electricity and fewer carbon emissions. If the station offsets enough coal or gas plants, we'd see environmental benefits. But that might be years off. Meanwhile, the project's construction period may create an engineering spectacle. Multiple rocket launches, possibly televised docking of huge solar arrays, and robotic arms building a megastructure overhead. Media coverage could stimulate public fascination, not unlike the early days of the space race. Skeptics, though, urge caution. Technological wonders can stumble on politics or budgets. Maintaining trust across borders might be tricky, especially if one country's orbital solar station becomes a linchpin of another's power grid. Economic and strategic dependencies could lead to friction. Who dictates the price, ensures safety, or arbitrates if a third party tries to disrupt the station? And then there's that fundamental question. Do we really need to launch solar panels to orbit, or can Earth-based solutions handle our energy transition? Global solar and wind capacity is already enormous and growing. Large-scale batteries or pumped hydro address intermittent supply. Nuclear power offers reliable baseload. Proponents of space solar say it complements those systems, potentially reducing the land footprint and providing near-limitless energy. Opponents see it as an overcomplication. Regardless, the ambition is real. China's plan to build a kilometer-wide station has advanced beyond sketches, with prototypes under development and heavy-lift rockets in the pipeline. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, JAXA, and the European Space Agency also tinker with variations. If even one demonstration proves effective, we might witness a transformative shift in how we power modern civilization. The notion of beaming solar energy from space, once purely sci-fi, is inching toward tangible reality. For now, all eyes are on China's heavy-lift rocket program, the design of the orbital panels, and the ground-based receivers. Should the first pieces begin assembling in orbit by the next decade, we'll see whether another Three Gorges Dam in space can truly usher in an era of unstoppable solar flow. Much stands in the way: cost, safety, politics, but the momentum is growing. If it ever fully succeeds, we might find ourselves looking skyward as the primary source of power, with entire cities lit by energy captured far above the clouds.